Welcome, everyone, to the Cultivating Compassion Education series, sponsored by Compassionate Care ALS. We're honored today to have with us Tom Daly, PhD, who's going to speak about how to care for yourself in order to care for others. Tom is a co-founder of the Living Arts Foundation with his wife, Jude Blitz. He's the founder of Four Gateways Coaching and creator of the Radical Soul Care Training Program. Tom is a teacher, mentor, life coach, and a nationally respected elder in men's soul work. He has worked with CCALS for many years as a coach for both caregivers and those living with ALS. Tom and our founder, Ron Hoffman, met 22 years ago. Tom became an important part of Ron's life, a dear friend, mentor, and colleague. Tom is best known perhaps for his ability to create safe spaces for deep inner soul work. Welcome, Tom, and thank you for joining us today.
Yay. Thank you, James. Yeah, it's an opportunity that I always enjoy to work with any members of this community. I feel like it's a privilege to share in the lives of the caregivers and those living with ALS. So thanks for this opportunity. I'd like to start this morning by just doing a short, very short meditation to kind of create an opportunity for us to get in the same space together. So for those of you that feel comfortable, I suggest you just close your eyes for a minute and take a nice, easy breath. Just kind of notice your breath. Don't have to change it in any way. Just be aware of your breathing. Maybe just even make a little sound on the exhale, just allowing yourself to soften a little bit more with each breath. Just a little bit of melting, just coming right into this here and now moment. And just imagine you're sitting in someplace in nature where you're very comfortable. And just imagine the space around you, knowing that your body comes from the earth. Every cell, every atom in this body rose up and collected itself as you, right, out of this earth. So just feeling the connection to nature and the great cycles of life and death on this planet, knowing that we are, in fact, just animals, just like other animals, and we depend on the plants and animals of this earth as a gift. And as you're feeling your presence there, I'd like you to just realize and be aware of the fact that you're being breathed right now. You're being given this gift of life right here, right now, in this moment. And that awareness is, in fact, a miracle, this gift of human consciousness. It's an amazing miracle, an everyday miracle. Sometimes it's easy to forget that. And with the next breath, just coming down to your heart, the area of your heart, and just knowing that the heart is just another access point to wisdom. You have a big heart that both gives and receives love. And it's so important to feel that blessing circuit that happens between you and others. And all those inner parts of you, all those inner voices. And as you sit there, in this space, that you're comfortable. Just open to the awareness that you have thousands of ancestors behind you. And every one of those people had to have been there for you to be here now. And in your heart, just offering thanks for this long line of ancestors behind you. They too can be a source of support. Many of them, I'm sure, have gone through similar things and have dealt with difficulties in their lives in some ways, and they can be a source of strength for you as well. And also coming down into your belly, just whatever feeling, whatever the sensations are right now in the gut wisdom, I like to call it. I'm going to talk later about the 4 different ways you can access wisdom. And this is another one. There's a sense that from this place, you can take action, you can center yourself. In the Eastern traditions, this is called the Hara or the Dantian. It's a center of gravity, but it's also the center of this sense of being able to protect yourself. So it's another access point to wisdom. So now just imagining you're kind of an energy field. You're an energy egg. You've got all around you, like imagine there's this kind of a magenta egg shape. And just take a minute to balance your field. What would that feel like to balance this field left to right, top to bottom, front to back? Just imagine you're in this beautiful cocoon of healing energy. And just notice how that feels when you feel safe and at home right here and now in this moment. And with another nice deep breath, just coming back into awareness, slowly opening your eyes, soft eyes. Coming back into this space of connection between us right now. Okay. Thanks. So we'll be going deeper into those 4 wisdom gateways a little later in the program. But for right now, I'm just start by welcoming you all and just knowing that we're going to be going through a process today. First, I'd like to tell you where we're going. We're just going to spend a few minutes here talking about what self-care is, the way I view it, and the actual complexity of that. It sounds like a very simple thing. Well, just take care of yourself. We all kind of know intuitively that when we take really good care of ourselves, we're in the best possible position to take care of those around us and be in contact and be present with them. But as it turns out, it's actually a little more complicated than that. And I'll talk some more about those complications. So once we get a different definition of what that might mean and how it would impact you, then I want to talk a little bit about how the particular complexities of dealing with that within the ALS community. and how different it is for caregivers and those living with ALS. And then the second half of the program, I want to actually take you through a process that I call the 4 gateways, which are access points for these different ways of knowing, deep knowing within yourself. And so I'm looking forward to sharing this with you. And so I'll just start by talking a little bit about my own experience with self-care. It's, we all understand how self-care, how important self-care is. And we have to realize that those words sound easy, like, why, of course, why wouldn't we take care of ourselves? But in my own life, I realized early on that when I actually tried to care for myself or speak up about what was right for me as a child, I got a pretty strong message that if I was doing that, then I was being selfish. And I got this message that linked up self-care and selfishness. So that really limited my ability to care for myself in some ways, because of course, I didn't want to appear selfish. So that thought basically limited my life in many ways. And it took me quite a few years of doing inner work to get to the point where I realized, my life was just totally limited by this avoidance of appearing to be selfish in any way. And so I couldn't really take care of myself in the way that felt natural and appropriate. And so it took me on a course of going much deeper into that question. And I've been pursuing that now for most of the rest of my life. It's like, how could I do this? How could I do this better? How could I do this in a way that wasn't painful for me? And so it led me down this path of doing work with others in a way that, I could be helpful to them, and at the same time, I could honor myself in my own process. So it required a big shift of consciousness for me. And so at some point, I was introduced to this 4-part model of looking at how to deeply care for myself and others, and maybe help them find a way to do this that was more holistic, that wasn't just the simple thing of, well, you should eat better, or you should work out, or you should take time for yourself, or, whatever those little admonitions are. And so I began to see that self-care, really real self-care, is more than just kind of this physical process or, thinking a certain way. It really is about caring for our souls. And so I call this soul work, really. Self-care is really, to me, is soul work. And I was happy to discover that one of the dictionary definitions of the soul is, I'll just read it to you, the seat of life, vitality, or being, the essence or animating principle or actuating cause of life manifested in humans as thinking, feeling, willing, and being. And so when I found that dictionary definition, it lined up perfectly with a process that, I had discovered along the way, which I call 4 gateways. And so this process that I've, worked with for many years is, I call it radical soul care. And so it kind of transcends the simple idea of self-care, like doing, like I mentioned, this, eating right and getting exercise and that most basic stuff, because it has way more depth to it than that. And so I find this particularly helpful with members of the ALS community, because there's so self-care is so tricky in working with the differences between those who are living with ALS and the caregivers and their families. People, working with ALS in their personal lives and their caregivers actually live in very different worlds. And those of you, intimately involved as you are, I'm sure you have experienced this yourself. The ways of dealing with, the grief and the sadness and the, all the different feelings that you have, the fears that come up, the challenges in relationships. It just goes on and on. And I think I just have such tremendous compassion for, having worked with both caregivers and those with ALS. I just feel this, I feel the conflict and the difficulty that comes up almost immediately because of those two different worlds that each partner in this experience is living through. I mean, an example would be, a fear. Maybe the person with ALS is fearing dying and losing capacity, but the fear of the caregiver is losing their partner and fears of what will come after. And so even though both people are experiencing fear or grief or anger or whatever the emotion might be, it's going to feel very differently to the two of them. And it's so, I just feel the complexity of trying to navigate those two different worlds. And I'm sure you've had plenty of those experiences in your own life. And so I guess I just want to say, kindness is kind of the bottom line here. Just knowing that you're going to be in different worlds. And that's just part of the situation that's happening in, when this diagnosis comes into your family or with your friends. And so, let me just see. So one of the most important things I think is just really allowing yourself to feel whatever it is. um, there's going to be denial and anger and confusion and, sometimes outrage, definitely helplessness on both sides, but it's a different kind of helplessness for the both of you. Overwhelmed, doubt, feeling abandoned or despairing. It's a lot, and I understand that. It's the most challenging kind of situation I can imagine. And so how to allow yourself actually to have all that and to appreciate that as you feel it, you can actually handle it. I mean, I personally believe that our souls are only given what we can handle. And those experiences that we're having are exactly the ones that will deepen our own soul work. And if we can take it that way, if we can say, this is exactly the right path for me to deepen my soul work, then some deep kind of transformation can happen. I've certainly worked with people who have resisted the diagnosis and just, fought it to the very end, hating it. But the people that seem to do the best are those who say, okay, this is the biggest challenge that I've ever had to face. And I'm willing to do that. And I'm willing to learn from it. And I'm willing to deepen into my soul work. So the challenge is to turn and face it as much as possible and to feel all of it. And I know how hard that is. I mean, I've had, as a caregiver for my own wife, I just know how difficult that can be. It's supremely challenging. And I have to just keep coming back to the fact that, yes, I can do this, as much as it puts me on an edge, as much as it's a huge, struggle. That struggle can have meaning for me. And the bottom line, of course, for me is, how can I love the situation as it is as much as possible? How can I love myself, my partner, every day, and love life and feel the aliveness that's available to me, that I've been given, and take that as an enormous blessing, and honor all that's come before that has prepared me for what's going on now. So I do want to offer opportunities for questions, but I think I'll save that for the end. And I'd like to take you actually through the process that I often use, that I call the 4 gateways, and gives you access to these 4 different wisdom pathways that all of us have within our souls. So if you have a piece of paper and a writing instrument, that could be helpful. You don't have to do it. You don't have to write these things down. You can hold them, in your mind as we go through the process. But sometimes it's really great to, have a piece of paper, and of course, we'll give you. James will make available the questions that I'm going to ask you, but for right now, I don't want you to read the questions. I'm just going to speak them. And so, yeah, let's just pause for a moment here. Take another breath. And I'd like you to start this process by thinking of a self-care / soul care issue for you, what is something that you would want in terms of your own self-care or soul care at this point in your life? What's a desire you have? What's some way in which you'd like to care for yourself more deeply, physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationally? It could be any dimension of deeper soul care. And I like to think of it in terms of, the physical level, the psychological level, the relational level, and the soul or spiritual level. Yeah, so just hold in your mind and heart the issue that you'd like to, let's just say, get better at in terms of self-care and soul care. And then when you have that, just imagine what actually might get in the way. When you go for what you want in that regard, what shows up instead? Or what pattern do you see? A barrier or a resistance, or some way you stop yourself from getting what you want? So now just holding that in mind, or just jotting that down on a piece of paper. So you have the desire, you have the want, and then something shows up. So now, if you have a piece of paper, you're going to look at it and you can see that there's these two voices there, or you can imagine it in your mind. And if you don't, if you haven't written it down on a piece of paper, but if it's convenient, you could even have like two items that you're looking at in your room. Like, just imagine, if there's two chairs in the room, just seeing one voice in one chair and one in the other, or one voice as a book and the other voice as another book. Or you can even imagine, holding out your hands, and you've got the one voice in one hand and the other voice in the other hand. So here's a very important part, and that is, I want you to just imagine stepping outside of yourself and answering the rest of these questions kind of from the third person instead of first person. So as you're looking at your hands, or those two parts, I want you to imagine looking at them as if they were a friend of yours, or somebody that you knew really well. So I want you to kind of abstract yourself from this situation. Kind of, one of my friends calls it going to the balcony, or going to the witness place. And so as you do that, I want you to then we're going to start in the thinking realm. So what are your thoughts, judgments, perceptions as you look at this person with the issue? What are your thoughts, perceptions, or judgments for this friend of yours, this one you know deeply? They want something in terms of their self-care, and then something gets in the way. So what are your thoughts about that pattern? Both positive and negative judgments are fine. And jot that down, or just hold those thoughts and judgments. And you can do this with your eyes closed. Sometimes it's easier to imagine, or you can just look down at your hands or those two things you've written down. Okay, so we're going to go to the next. So that was the first gateway of wisdom. It's, thinking. And we're going to go to the feeling. So I'd like you to just take a big breath and kind of drop down into your heart space. And as you look at those two voices, two ways, the one that you want, what gets in the way, how do you actually feel? How does it feel to look at this person with this issue, with this kind of inner conflict? Are you mad, sad, glad, afraid? Some combination of those. See if you can just stay with that feeling place. It might be helpful to just imagine, what is my heart telling me about this issue and the person with this issue? What's that heart wisdom telling me about how that is for me, how that is for that person? I mean, I want to stay in the third person, so just keep imagining it's outside you. Yeah. For this friend of yours, you're looking at yourself from the outside. So what does your heart tell you about them? Okay, so just taking another breath, and we're going to just shift in your chair a little bit, or move just a little bit. So we're going to look from the point of view of what I call the doer, or the protector. And so the question here is, what might be the risk for this person of changing that pattern? Right now, that pattern is kind of locked in. There's some way in which there's a certain kind of status quo, or there's a certain kind of identity associated with wanting that, and that thing coming up. And it's like, it's been a way in which actually it's protected that person. It's kept them from taking some kind of a risk of changing. So I'd like you to just jot down, or hold in your heart and your mind, what would be the risk of changing? What if you were to just say, I wonder if that's really true? I wonder if I let go of or if he or she let go of that pattern, what would actually be the risk of that? And of course, there's a flip side to the risk too, which is, what if this pattern doesn't change? I mean, what's the risk of it not changing? What happens if the pattern just stays locked in there? And there's a third element to this too, and that is there a risk worth taking now? Is there a risk worth taking? Could this person actually make a shift here could they actually make a move here? Is it time? Okay, taking another nice big deep breath, and we'll go to the fourth area. Just shifting your chair a little bit, maybe move a little bit, and we're going to shift into the area of blessing and support. So, what support might they need to change this pattern, this dynamic that's going on here? What kind of support would that require? And how would that support look and sound? Can you imagine if you could say something to both those voices to offer support and encouragement to take the risk? What might you say actually to them? And that kind of takes us back to the risk question. It's like sometimes a risk shows up asking for support, and I think that's a very deep inquiry. A lot of us don't ask for support when we need it, and you can actually do another whole process on that itself. Okay, so what we're going to do is James is going to put you in dyads for just a brief breakout session. And I think let's just take 3 minutes each to share. And the prompt going into the sharing would be just a real brief few words about what's the issue and what gets in the way, and then any insights or awarenesses that you were able to harvest by feeling into those questions. So I'll just say it again, real quick explanation of the two voices, and then any awarenesses or takeaways that you got from thinking about those questions. Okay, so 3 minutes apiece. So we'll have about 6 minutes here all together, and then we'll come back and share a little bit and do some Q&A.
All right, Tom, take it away.
So yeah, I'd just love to, anybody that's willing, maybe you could raise your hand and James can unmute you. Anything, an awareness, a takeaway that you got from the process, or any question you had about, any of this, the material that I spoke to before. So yeah, this is just kind of an open Q&A, but I would love to hear how the process went for a few people. So if somebody's willing.
I'll talk about my experience. So I believe it was Melody that I was in a session with, and both of us, hers was meditation, and mine was a massage.
Mm,
And so, we shared a lot of the same feelings, and the obstacle um, for me is financial and finding the time. And for her, it was doing it because meditation takes a short time. And
mhm.
I suggested that it's motivation to act on it and also make it a part of your routine.
Oh, great.
So, we were kind of similar, and it was
Sure.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are you willing to take the risk to see if you can shift that?
Yes, I definitely am because I feel like, like I said to her, we're going at the same goal with different um, activities, but it's to quiet the space. The massage is your body and your mind.
Hmm.
And so I've been putting it on the back burner because of doctor's visits and things
Oh,
like
sure.
that.
Yep.
The schedule just is busy, and I have to make it a priority. And I've done it 3 times since my diagnosis, but I'd like to do it monthly.
Sure. That's great. Yeah. I mean, the good news is any movement in the direction of of self and soul care is helpful. And I know sometimes I get caught in, making my list of things that I want to do. And I have to just be kind to myself and say, I have a certain limits to my time and energy. And I have to look at, which priorities are the most important. And
Right.
yeah, and just be compassionate with yourself. Yeah. Thanks so much, Eileen.
Thanks,
Uh,
Eileen. I think Raylene, you had your hand up earlier. Do you want to say a few words?
Well, I was Eileen's partner. I'm the one needing the meditation.
Oh, okay. What is your first name?
It's
Raylene.
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 Raylene. Okay.
Raylene. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was wonderful. It, talking about the meditation, the act of doing it, the limited time it takes to do it. It's just committing to do it. And like Eileen suggested, it's making a habit of it, a routine, like brushing my teeth. So yeah, it was helpful for me.
Yeah, good.
And
And
yeah,
yeah, what kind of
thank
support
you.
would be the most important for you? I mean, how would you
Support.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, how would you
Well,
like to be supported
like,
in doing that?
yeah, I think I honestly do believe I have the resources. I have the support of my husband who would allow me some quiet time if I committed to doing it. I could simply say, this is my I'm gonna sneak out into a quiet space and take 5, 10, 15 minutes and do my meditation and see you when I come out. And I'll be a better person for it, I'm sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
And and it's
Yeah.
easy and it's good to remember too, like you said, timing is really not that essential. You can take 2 minutes out of the day almost anytime. So it's important to
That's
remember
right.
that.
You can do it in your car. You can do it,
That's right. That's right.
anywhere really. So
Good.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Anybody else? Anybody have any thoughts about the process or any of those things that I talked about before?
Yeah, Tom, I was just wondering, what do you do when both aspects of the equation seem to be equally valid?
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, I think that's the important part of doing the process is if you can imagine yourself actually kind of stepping into both parts and having a conversation between those parts. I mean, that's the way I do it. Actually, I have one part, that has that desire or whatever it is, and then I step over into the other part and I let them have a conversation to deepen whatever it is that's going on. And then I step out into the four quadrants and I look at both of them again after I've heard a little bit deeper conversation. What happens is the more you inquire about this, the greater depth you get in understanding where the desire comes from and where the resistance comes from. And a lot of us, have a lot of resistance to asking for the support that we need, for a variety of reasons. And so the way I think about it is any issue that comes up like this is an opportunity to deepen into our soul work and get more information. So instead of resisting and going to distractions and things like that, it's like, okay, maybe I should just journal about this, or maybe I can just stand here and I can imagine one voice is in one hand and one's the other, and I can look at myself and see what's going on. Yeah. I mean, is it, and the one of the most important questions, I get this from the work of Byron Katie, and that is keep asking, what's true here? What's the truth of my resistance? What's the truth of each one of those statements? Do I really need whatever it is that I want? And is this resistance really true? And noticing, how those patterns develop in us is always going to give me more understanding about my particular soul path and how I can work with it.
Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
I'm going to reach out on a limb a little bit here. And please, I'm noticing that John Goodson's on the call today. Hi, John. Nice to see you. You did a really wonderful talk for us a couple months ago, and I'm just wondering how this feels to you related to your own process of caring for yourself and navigating this path of ALS. You don't have to speak if you don't want to, John.
I think it's always important to reach closure on some of these back and forth arguments you have with your interior self. I think that's part of where this ultimately has to lead us. And so, you have these feelings things that you want to achieve, barriers. You can approach it intellectually and emotionally, but at some point you get closer to that point of accepting that you're there. I think it is ultimately asymptotic, which means that you never really get there, but you get to a point where you have sufficiently resolved, answered, dealt with, accepted what your goal is.
Thanks, John. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Tom.
Yeah, I think that, you probably are all familiar with the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief. And, that's that acceptance piece is the last one. And that's obviously the hardest one to come to. And it's, like I said, it's very different for caregivers and for those living with ALS. It's a whole different world, because accepting life without your partner in the one case and accepting your imminent death is the other one. So it's a huge leap. It's a huge step.
There was a very interesting op-ed in the New York Times this last week or so, I think it was, and that added a number 6 step, which is recognition that this doesn't ever really leave you. And it was a story of a man who lost his child, and he went through his 5 steps, but he needed to do something beyond the acceptance. And for him, it was recognizing that this event had led him somewhere where he otherwise would never have been. And he accepted the value of that.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's so important. Yeah. Thank you for that, John.
All right, everyone. Well, our time is up for today. If you have other questions that you'd like to share with Tom, please feel free to email me at james@ccals.org, and we can pass those along. We'll also follow up with an email from Tom, kind of providing a bit of an outline of what he went over today if you want to carry on with this work on your own, or find a partner that you can do it with, which is really, it can be very helpful.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for being with us today. And Tom, thank you so much, brother.
Yeah, I think you, for those of you that would want more information about the 4 Gateways process or radical soul care, you can also go to the website, livingartsfoundation.com. livingartsfoundation.com. That's the website for my wife and myself. There's a lot of information about both those there.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.